Last year I did a video titled Confessions of Evil. Since then, it has been my #1 most requested video to do more of. If you haven't seen it, I will link it in the description box below. Well, all of you evil seekers, you'll be pleased to know I finally found more that will meet the level of dirt you're looking for. So without further ado, here are Confessions of Evil, Part 2. Enjoy. I was assaulted by my grandfather from the age of 8 until I was 12. I had to go there after school every day to be babysat until my parents were done at work. I told my mom after 6 months or so, and her response, "Don't tell your dad, it would really hurt him." He was my paternal grandfather. I gave up trying to tell anyone else for about a year. Then I told my cousin, who is 4 years older than I am. Her response was anger, and asking me how I could dare to speak out against our grandfather that way. Fast forward to when I was 16. He had a stroke and was in the hospital with pneumonia. The whole family, aunts, uncles, etc., went to see him for some reason that I don't recall, and we were all visiting and hanging out. My uncle was in the hall with my little cousin, and at one point called everyone out to come see because she was starting to take her first steps. So everyone gathered in the doorway, facing out, and I was left sitting beside my grandfather's bed in a chair. He started coughing. I leaned over and took off his oxygen mask. It was so surreal. He was gasping, and my heart was pounding. I was waiting for someone to turn around and see or hear him, but they were all intent on watching my little cousin, and they were all being so loud. It only took a couple of minutes, but it felt like hours. I put the mask back on him when I knew he had passed, waited a few minutes, and then yelled for my dad to come in because Grandpa looked weird. I remember my face was burning hot, thinking they have to know. Someone is going to know. No one knows. I will get right to the point here and say that I don't need to write a novel about this, so here it goes. Sometimes I watch people being murdered or physically abused when I'm jerking off, and sometimes it's the only thing that gets me off. My parents got divorced when I was 6, and my mother got full custody because my dad was very abusive. She'd always tell the story of how they were fighting before the divorce, and the 3 of us were out boating, and my dad tried to tip the boat so that my mother and I would drown. Flash forward 20 years later, when I reconnected with my father. We were driving to meet his family, and he had a mental breakdown, and proceeded to confess that he is bipolar and wasn't on his meds, but he did in fact try to push her and I over the side of the boat in hopes that we'd drown. He also wasn't taking his medication again when he confessed. Confessions? Okay, here's one. I killed my best friend by accident while high on cocaine a year ago. Accidentally pushed her off a bridge. After living with my then girlfriend, almost fiance, for 3 years, she told me one evening that she shot and killed her previous husband in that home. She also told me that she put his body in an old shed in the backyard, but I didn't believe her. A few months later, she tried to kill me by shooting me ambush style in the same living room. I got shot but recovered physically. Investigators later discovered her original story was true. Her ex had been in the shed for years. My now ex-boyfriend confessed to being a pedophile. He told me he'd never actually done anything to a child, but looked at pictures. I was kind of afraid of him, so I didn't know what to do. Eventually, he introduces me to his friends. They're cool, but a bit strange. Eventually, I find out they're pedophiles too. Was legitimately terrified, so I just cut all contact with them. There's a woman who was apparently used in rituals as a sex toy by some local group of witches that her stepmother belonged to. It went on from age 6 to 18 and included all the weird chanty candle pentagram stuff, but also included being buried alive, being put in a hole and having spiders dumped on her, sex torture, and intentionally splitting her personality so that she would not remember any of it. She was actually programmed to kill herself at age 40, and the unsuccessful attempt was what started unraveling everything. The family started to piece together what was going on, and at first they didn't believe it. But eventually, as more information came to light, they believed what happened. She had over 50 different personalities. Some were children, some were teenagers, and at least one was a man. Not sure how all that works, but eventually she got all of her personalities integrated and is now somehow living a normal life. When I was 15, my parents were going through a divorce. My mom worked night shifts and my dad lived with a friend of his. One night, my sister, who was 19 at the time, came home pretty drunk from a party. She was acting goofy and fell on the couch next to me. She started grabbing my leg and laughing, and we started messing around. Ended up having sex right there. When we woke up the next day, she had no recollection of the night before, so I just kept my mouth shut. Fast forward to when I'm 18. Sister is home from college, and Dad is over for a visit. They get into an argument, and in a fit of rage, my dad announces how he has never forgiven her for the abortion she got when she was 19 and subsequently killing his grandchild. I then realize the baby she aborted was in fact mine, and as far as I know, I'm the only one who knows since she has never mentioned that night. My daughter turns 5 next week, and if anyone knew the truth behind her parentage, I could probably lose her forever. I grew up in foster care, never knowing my parents or siblings. In my senior year, I met an older guy and we dated for almost a year. I got pregnant, and about 7 months in, while we were watching TV one night, the subject somehow came around to our real parents. He had been adopted as a young child. Turns out the man I was seeing, the father of my daughter, is my half-brother, and we share the same mother. Our relationship didn't last, and he is not in her life per his own choices. My daughter is smart, beautiful, and well-rounded. She'll never know the truth. Her father and I made a pact to never tell her. I just hope she never needs a kidney or something. I have a blind brother, and when we were young, I used to get so frustrated at all the extra attention he received and how I had to be more responsible with my sibling than my peers. So, when my brother and I would go play, go to the store, or just generally go anywhere without adults, I would abandon him somewhere unfamiliar to him. Then, I would stand off quietly and watch the anxiety set in as he tried to figure out where he was and what was going on. I knew that was my ticket to attention. When I would help my brother with his homework, I would teach him all the wrong answers so that I could continue being the smarter sibling. Today, though, my brother is my best friend. He goes to college and lives all by himself. He's become one of the most intelligent men I've ever met. I'm trying to make it up to him now by being the best big sister ever, but I still feel so guilty at how I found him to be a burden when I was a child. I accidentally killed 7 people. I put a rag in a new water heater exhaust to keep debris out and installed it in a rental. I get a call a week later. There's been an accident. I show up, and there's a ton of EMS and police. They ask me where the gas shutoff is, and I go down to shut the gas off and see the end of the rag I forgot sticking out of the top of the heater. Ripped out the rag, shut the gas off, and head upstairs only to be told all the tenants were dead. I drink all day now and sleep. It's killing me from the inside every single day. But if I say anything, my family is ruined. We have a bunch of rental properties, and we'd be shut down to say the least. I came very, very close to committing a school shooting. I was picked on a lot in high school. I think it was because I tried so hard to be cool, and everyone saw right through it. There were these 4 cowboy jock types that gave it to me the worst. After being publicly humiliated and beaten in front of a girl I liked, as she laughed and cheered, I decided that none of it was worth it anymore. I had no support at home, being an only child, and having parents that worked constantly. Cutting and burning myself didn't make me feel any better anymore. So I got my dad's handgun out of the gun safe. He uses the same combo for everything, and brought it to school with me the next day. I cannot adequately describe to you guys how ready I was to kill these 4. I had absolutely no fear or doubt in my mind. I wanted nothing more than to show everyone what happens when you push someone over the edge like that. I had the gun tucked to my waistline. I was wearing a baggy pair of cargo shorts that I wore a couple times a week. I remember walking toward the cowboy's table, so goddamn ready for this to be over, when the gun fell out of my waistline, down my left short leg, and made the loudest fucking sound as it hit the cafeteria floor. I tried my best to grab the gun real quick, but people saw it and screamed, and one of the instructors tackled me to the ground. They eventually concluded that I had brought the gun to school to impress people with badassery, and had no intention of using it. I was expelled and sent to live at a youth ranch in Idaho until I was 18. I did have the intention of using it, though. I was going to kill all of them. I'm 24 now, and I still think about that all the time. I have not recovered from high school. I'm still terrified of people in general, and avoid having relationships because I fear what I'm capable of. I'm not looking for pity. I know what I did was wrong. It just feels good to tell the story. I masturbate a lot, and when I was 10, I had a technique where I'd let off a load in a sock, wash it, and dry it. I couldn't leave it hanging outside or use a dryer, otherwise my family would have seen it and probably smelled it or whatnot. So I put it inside my gas heater unit. Unfortunately, my sock had gotten caught on fire inside of the unit, blew it, and set my house on fire. Only my brother was home at the time, and he managed to survive, though the house did not. For 5 years we stayed from caravan park to caravan park, whilst we waited for confirmation that it was not arson and we could receive an insurance payout. We eventually did, and scraped together money to start rebuilding the house. The house is still being rebuilt to this day, and it shames me anytime I have to visit my parents living in a tiny mobile home where my backyard once was. When I was 13, I caught my father in bed with my 15-year-old brother's girlfriend, who was also 15. I haven't seen her since, but I've been blackmailing my father with it for the last 6 years. Had him buy a car each for me and my brother, a couple of computers, a 360, a PS3, rent when I needed, etc. He's pretty loaded, and the only time we saw him growing up was when we went to stay with him for a month or so in the summer. So everyone assumes he's just trying to make up for it, not being there or trying to buy our love. Last year, my brother decided not to go stay with him, as we usually would. He was taking a course over the summer. So I told everyone I went, but instead had him send my girlfriend and I, who I will not be introducing him to Europe for a few weeks. When I was 12, I went with some family to the Family Dollar store. My mother and cousins went off to look at general groceries, and so I decided to just spend my time hanging out in the toy aisle. The toy aisle always had these bags of marbles that the other kids would open and leave laying there. So I decided to fling marbles across the floor, and one just happened to reach one of the far-off aisles. So about 20 minutes later, I hear a loud crash, and someone screaming, "Somebody help this man!" Being the curious child I was, I ran over to see what the commotion was about, and I find everyone gathered around this guy who had fallen from the ladder as he was getting something off the top shelf. The guy was seizing out, and blood was coming from his head as he laid there, and his face seemed to be turning blue. My mother whisked me and my cousins away. Next time we went, we talked to the front cashier, and she said that they called the paramedics, but by the time they got there, he had died from choking. Apparently, when he had the seizure, he was choking on his own tongue. The cause for the fall, according to the front cashier, was that he had put the ladder on a marble and didn't check before he got on it. When I heard what the cashier said, I just stood in disbelief, thinking that I was going to jail. I tried telling my mother many times, but all she did was say that I imagined it. Well, what about you? Do you have a deep, dark secret that you just need to confess? If so, email me at duchessdark676@gmail.com. However, I think there are some secrets better left unsaid. Like the time the cats got on our kitchen counter and started eating our dinner, and we forgot to tell our father until he was halfway through his meal. Yeah, we should have kept that one to ourselves. See you next time.